Hi, how are you doing? I am Dr. Canute White, and you're listening to Canute Exploration, your topic in the podcast. Yet another exciting, interesting episode of Canute Exploration. Look, those of you who want to start your business, it's going to be an exciting episode because you will get some sort of tips from my guest, and not only that, you will also understand where she is coming from in terms of starting her own business and how she had succeeded in doing that. So it will help you to be encouraged, to be empowered, and that's what we do here on Canute Exploration, your topic in a podcast. Look, I'm going to let my guest in now so that we can have this discussion for the next 20 to 30 minutes to empower you and yours as you share this episode, as you subscribe, encourage others to subscribe to Canute Exploration, your topic in a podcast. Let's my guest in. Amit, am I pronouncing that correctly?
Yes, you are. Yes, you are.
Getting better with names. I'm getting better with names. But before I continue with the rest of the question, what I'd like to ask you, who is Amit? And I'd like you to pronounce that last name for me. Who are you?
It's just Cabra. Cabra.
Cabra. Right. Who is Amit Cabra?
Oh gosh, who am is I am. Ooh, that's a loaded question there. I own an online marketing agency that's specializing in pay-per-click advertising, so like Google, Facebook ads, and it's called Hopskip Media. I've been in the industry for 13 years now. Started when I was 19, just somehow stumbled into this passion of mine, and it's been a wild ride for sure. And then outside of that, I have two dogs.
Right.
I'm a sister to many adopted brothers, but they're not legally adopted. I just say that they are. And yeah, that's kind of really basically it. It's just my dogs and my family.
Okay. Are you in the United States?
No, I'm in Canada.
Okay, that's all right. I am hailing from Miramar in Florida, United States. Nice to have you in from Canada. Look, I often ask my guests this question, and I'm sure you have watched some of my episodes, right? But I'd love to hear about your childhood. Age 7, 10, 15. Talk to us about that.
My childhood, I feel like, was pretty typical of a child of immigrants, really, at this point. So both my mother and my father immigrated here. My mom was 14. I think my dad was somewhere in his 20s when he came. I never really quite understood what was going on in terms of finances or anything like that. Like my parents always just somehow provided for us. So it was a pretty happy childhood, I would like to say. I got everything that I wanted for the most part. High school was the typical experience, not the greatest, but also not the worst at the same time. You had your moments of bullying and stuff like that, and then some moments where you find your friends and you're able to kind of figure out your own little community, and that's kind of where I got lucky, where I just met some really great people and was able to hang on to them the entire time. So yeah, that's kind of like the short version of me growing up, I guess.
That's all right. I heard that Indian accent.
Yes. So my parents are Punjabi, so they're both from India, but I was born in Canada.
Okay, I got you. I got you. I love that Indian accent. Okay. All right. Let's dive into some of the questions that would bring out the meat of the matter here, as we would say in Jamaica. What is the best business advice you have ever had from anyone?
Oh gosh, I think my favorite is the notion of just trying because everybody else is too scared to. So we're already a step ahead. I've always been I love taking risks. I've always been that person. I'm that, you tell me you want to jump out of a plane, I likely will do it with you. My friends used to call me like basically a monkey. We would go on hiking trails and I would just hop from tree to tree. And they're like, you're going to kill yourself. And I'm like, this is fun. This is perfect. Let's do it. So for me, I think it just naturally came that this was going to be the career path that I was going to take. But along the way, obviously, there's moments where you kind of start to second guess yourself or question whether this is the right decision. And every single time, almost every single time, everybody would say, "You're one step ahead already. You've already tried." Most people won't, and that always gave me a little bit of comfort. Where I want to be able, and this is going to sound a little morbid, but like when I'm on my deathbed, I want to be able to say that I did everything that I wanted to, or at least I tried. That there's nothing in my mind that I go, I wonder what would have happened. I already know. Either I failed or I succeeded. It's one of those two options. And failure isn't necessarily failure. It's a moment of learning and kind of getting ready and reiterating whatever it is that you failed at. So I think a lot of people see failure as something that's negative when it really shouldn't be. Um,
Yeah.
so yeah, those are a couple. It wasn't one. It was a couple little pieces there.
But you know, I mean, this thing about taking risk in business, it's more about losing the money and not necessarily failing. What do you think?
It is to a certain degree, but I feel like for me, at the very least, I feel like when money is needed in my life, I somehow find it. I can't quite explain it any other way. It's just it appears wherever it needs to. And I do understand that maybe not everybody has the luxury of saying that, but I got lucky on that front where I just seem to put in the extra hours, find the extra job if I need to, um, ask friends really at this point if I have to. And that's thankfully never had to happen. But for me, it's always just been taking an extra job. If I really, really want to make it happen, I'm going to make it happen. So I think really at this point, it's calculated risks, maybe
Yeah.
saving up enough for 6 months where you're sitting there going, hey, if I don't make any money for this time period, at least I'm somewhat cushioned. That's usually a really great strategy. And a couple of my friends have done that themselves where they made sure that they had a certain amount of months worth of expenses saved up before they actually decided to leave their corporate jobs for
Yeah.
their business, because obviously that, I mean, you need money to live. Otherwise you don't have anything. Right. So
Definitely.
it's just a matter of playing within your strengths really at that point.
Right, right. Because this risk taking with the money, the capital that you use to start that business, I think that most people perhaps afraid of losing that capital, losing that money, which has value, especially if you're getting a loan from someone or somebody just decide, let me invest with you.
Yeah, and I understand that, but I think at the same time, how much is it worth to sit there and wonder what could have been as well?
Yeah,
That's usually that's a really big thing for me, where I don't want to um, go to sleep every night wondering what could have been. It's an unsettling feeling for me. Some people are like that, some people aren't, and that's totally okay. But
yeah,
I would much rather lose the money and know than to keep the money and like it's not gonna do, like, I mean, it's gonna do something when it's sitting there, but at the same time, most people don't put it into investment accounts. They don't really do anything. They just leave it in the savings account. So for me, I'm like, you're kind of losing money due to inflation already. So you might as well just see if you can actually double that money or triple or quadruple or whatever exit, than to leave it in a bank account just losing cash anyway.
right. You sound like a risk taker. That's what a risk taker will say. And I love that. I love that. And a risk taker always succeed. And that's good. So tell me, you have started your business, right? And there are some things that you perhaps you thought you should have known before starting your business, and along the way you have learned, and that's what taking risk and starting business is all about. You learn along the way, but there are some things that you wish, I suspect, you knew before starting your business. Give us some highlights on that.
Oh gosh, I think the first one is entrepreneurship is incredibly lonely. So for many years, I just never really thought that anybody else could ever understand what I was going through, and thankfully, I ended up moving to a different province in Canada, and that's where I met a bunch of other people who were kind of in the same boat as me. So I was able to find my community away from home, which was really amazing, and then eventually I was able to find it online. So I think that's probably the first thing that I wish somebody would have told me, to find that community right off the bat, so I wouldn't have felt so alone the entire time. The other half is, and this is my own personal belief, some people agree with it, some people don't. Um, do one thing and do it really, really well
Yeah,
versus doing multiple things and being kind of mediocre at it. And then in the best example I have is literally agency life really at this point. There's a lot of agencies that do everything: website, content,
Okay.
social media, uh, obviously Google ads as well, and all of that. And everybody, I don't think there's one agency that does every single one of those things very, very well. They'll do one thing very well and everything else is kind of like, oh, it's an add-on. We'll just do it for our clients. And that's the end of it. And I tried that as well for 45 days. And then after that point, I realized I hated that notion. So I decided that, Google ads was frankly, the love of my life really at this point. And it's absolutely something that brings so much joy into my life that I eventually just niched down. And that was how I was able to grow, because everybody sat there and said, hey, Ameet is the Google lady. You go to her for those Google ad stuff. And then eventually it just kind of spread like wildfire really within that city. And I think that was probably the smartest decision I've ever made, is just being known for one thing versus being known for many things.
Yeah, that's important. You're listening to Canute Exploration, your topic in the podcast. I am Dr. Canute White, speaking to Ameet. I enjoy Ameet's perspective of taking risk. And I'm very interested, Ameet. I want to find out though, this concept of a lawsuit that perhaps was the best thing for you, right? I would like to hear about that. That's what we do here in Canute Exploration: empower, encourage others who might have been going through some challenges, and hey, they can actually feed from those challenges.
Yeah.
Tell me about that.
So this was kind of at the start of when I decided to go freelancing full time. So I was freelancing a couple of years beforehand, just kind of part time while I was working, and then eventually I decided that freelancing full time was what I wanted to do. And within 45 days, I had to file a lawsuit against a client. So basically, he essentially just chose not. He actually not even chose. He very blatantly told me that he wasn't going to pay for the services that he had rendered. And at that point, it was due to some errors that were on the website, but he wouldn't tell me what those errors were. So it was a very strange experience, because I can only see so far. And if you have an issue with the site and I can fix it, then you should probably tell me what the issue is. And his response was, if you can't see it, then you're probably not worth the money or something like that. And I remember sitting there going, I don't understand. Because on my end, everything looked fine. And there was some clear issues, but that was because he hadn't provided those assets yet. So I was like, well, we're waiting on some of this stuff, but like the rest of it's fine. And he was very used to kind of getting his way with agencies. He would kind of threaten them a little bit. And he had actually told me that during our discovery call. And for whatever reason, I totally didn't pick up on it. Like, it was not something that like registered in my mind. I was just really excited to finally have like my first client, and be able to really like pay for my own way and stuff like that. So yeah, I took on a client when I really shouldn't have. And then it kind of blew up on my face, and he kind of came back with an email saying, I'll see you in court. When I had said, well, you have to pay because we have a consulting agreement. And that was his response. So instead of responding back to the email, I decided to call a civil claims agent, because it was small enough that I didn't have to find a lawyer for it. And we filed the suit the next day. So when he woke up thinking that he had won this little argument, he actually found out that he didn't. And it was really quite funny for me, because I was like, imagine him just going to the office today and just finding a lawsuit sitting there waiting for him. Like,
It works so differently.
But I think it was just that notion of like, I think in business, a lot of men tend to believe that women are going to be weaker. So they'll kind of do that little push around. Thankfully, my mother is my mother. And she kind of always talked. I mean, years down the line, I realized that she talks a bigger game than she actually plays. But it worked out in my favor, because I kind of put my money where my mouth was. And I said, no, I want my money. You're going to pay me one way or another. You said you want to see me in court. Let's see each other in court then.
Right.
Yeah. And I knew that he had nothing really on me at that point. So I was like, it's admittedly a little bit of a waste of money on my end, but the satisfaction of it all, it kind of was actually probably worth that money.
Right. And being who you are, a risk taker, you take the risk. Hey, let's go.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. And it worked out for me at the end of it all. Admittedly I didn't get the full amount back, but I got most of it, so at the end of it all, it kind of worked out. So I was pretty happy with it.
Yeah. I'd love to know more about your business, though. Um, what do you do, and you know, just tell us something about what goes on in your business. Um, that's I've skipped. I'd love to know more about it. Right? What goes on there? Tell us about your business. Tell us a little.
Yeah, so we're an online marketing agency that specializes in pay-per-click advertising. So those ads that you see in Google, in search, the display ones, YouTube, same thing with social media. So Facebook, Instagram are kind of the three biggest players that we work with right now. Um, Essentially, what ends up happening is businesses will come to us and say, "Hey, we're looking to increase our lead generation. We want to bring in more people to our businesses so we can close more sales. Are you able to help with that essentially?" And then we'll sit there and evaluate everything and try to figure it out and kind of develop a strategy. But essentially, what Google Ads is when somebody searches, let's say a plumbing, like my pipes have just burst or something like that, and they're looking for an emergency plumber. Our ads would show up at the top, and the hope is for that potential client to click on our ad and call us, so we would go in for that particular job.
Okay. Okay. So you you're him at marketing, right, and helping businesses to improve in terms of marketing. So, um, take for instance, I would like your service. What do I do? What's the first step?
So you would probably get on a call with our director of sales and marketing, Idris. Uh, it's usually about a half an hour call, I think. And he just sits down with you, just trying to understand what your marketing objectives are, lets you know how we work, and then just to figure out if it's a good fit. And then we go over budgeting, whether how much money you have advertising alone, and then we'll figure out what our fees are on top of that, because those are two separate. They're two separate fees. So the ad spend, so what you're spending for advertising, is paid directly to the platform. We don't take that amount. Like that's just paid
Okay.
directly by the client, and that's just for transparency's sake. So the only thing we bill for is our management fees to manage your account, essentially. After that, it's a matter of you deciding whether or not you think it's worth the money and you want to take that leap or that risk. And then it's a consulting agreement. We ask for 90 days for a commitment, and then after that, it goes to a month-to-month agreement. Once that's signed, a questionnaire comes out to you, and then you fill in all the information about your business, what your objectives are, who you think
Okay.
your target audience is, along with account information so we can gain access to anything. If you don't have an account, then we'll create it. And then it's basically all on us after that point. We're the ones who are writing your ad copy. We're doing all the research for the keywords that we're going to be targeting. We do work very closely with our clients just because you're going to understand your business much better than we will ever be able
Right.
to. So we lean on our clients quite a bit to be like, does this language make sense? Do these keywords make sense? Where did we fall flat, and where did we succeed? And that way we can kind of like hopefully get to a point where we don't have to ask for so much help in the future. So that's usually kind of the aim. The first couple rounds of ad copy are pretty rough. I'm not going to lie. Sometimes with some clients, and they're like, "No, not it. You wrote this all wrong." But then they're pretty patient because we kind of give them that same spiel where we're like, "You know your business better than we will ever know your business."
Yeah.
And then it's just a matter of going off. So within 2 weeks is our aim to start the account. And then within that 2 weeks, all of that stuff is done. And then after that point, we basically just start giving you essentially kind of biweekly reports. And then that way you at least know what's going on in your account and how it's performing. And then if you have questions, you let us know. And then sometimes we'll do calls with our clients, but it depends on the client themselves. So it's a case by case basis on that one.
Right. And running across the screen is actually how your clients feel about you, right? And those persons listening on their favorite podcast platform will not be able to see it. But yeah, your clients are saying interesting things about your service, and that's
Mm-hmm.
important. This one though, I talk about you and the team. I know you execute a plan for us in only a few days. That was extremely successful. Um, that's great. So efficiency is where you're at in your business. Efficiency and timeliness. That's important.
That's yes, it really is. I feel like a lot of agencies take a lot of time to get things up and running, and I do understand why. But for me, it's always been time of the essence. So for us, the aim of getting everything up and running within 2 weeks, I think, is um, gives us enough time to take some time to make sure that we haven't made any errors on our part, but then also gives the client a clear indication of how long it's going to take versus something like, hey, you're going to have to pay us for a month for research. Like a lot of clients don't like the sound of that. 2 weeks, I think, is a little bit more reasonable, right? Because they're just going, okay, well, the other half, then they'll be able to prove their concept, which is why we like doing those biweekly reports, is so that they actually understand what we've done, but also how it's actually affecting them. So sometimes we can see amazing results within a couple days. Sometimes it does take a little bit longer, which is why we ask for those 90 days, just because we don't know what's happening in the account. It's a new market, it's a new demographic, it's a new business, but also new competition, and there's seasonality and stuff like that we need to consider. So I feel like a lot of people look at PPC as a very quick way to make some wins, and it definitely is. But there
Yeah.
is also a learning period for us as well.
Yeah, and you know, this client said also that his company or her company had made over 500% return on investment. That's important, especially with the help from your business. You know, I found that as very, very, very interesting. Right?
Yeah,
That's
they were
very
trying to sell some old stock of those hover scooters or hoverboards or whatever they're called. So this
yeah.
was, I think that quote's from a few years ago, and they were just trying to sell everything off. So I quickly just put something together for him, and he actually happened to be an old friend as well. So it kind of worked out in all fronts because I got to help a friend, and he got
Right.
to make some good money off of it.
Yeah, yeah, that's interesting. You know, I read something on your website. Um, well, it was about you starting out initially, and
Mhm.
you talked about I'm not looking at it now, but $250, and you have risen from that to I think it was a few millions or something like that. Talk to me about that. I can't remember exactly.
Yeah. So when I started my career, I was 19. I had started my first business then too, in event planning. So I took $250, I think it was, about every single month just to see if we could sell tickets to these events that we were hosting. And then eventually, about 3 years later, I decided that event planning was just not for me. I kind of hated it. So I closed up shop and decided to leave, um, to move to that other province or to Alberta. And
Right.
it's almost like overnight. It wasn't overnight for sure. It took a couple months, but it feels like it was overnight. I was um, in an office talking about Google Ads with a VP of marketing at a company, and suddenly he's like, "Okay, so you can start in 2 days, right?" And I just went, "Sure, let's do it. Like, why not?" And I walked in, and what I didn't realize is the size of the accounts that they were giving me. So
Yeah.
they gave me the entire portfolio, and that was valued at $4.3 million annually. So I went from 250 a month, which would be
Okay.
like what, $3,000 a year, to 4.3 million a year. And it was a really great learning curve for me because I went in blind. I didn't know what I was doing.
Yeah.
Thankfully, everybody kind of had an idea that I didn't. So they kind of showed me how to do a couple things, and then after that, I just kind of leaned on online communities to help me fill in the gaps, and eventually um, Google gave me like a rising star title.
Right.
I became an ambassador for them for a couple of years, and I was one of 25 in North America, and I think the entire planet really at that point, and one of 5 Canadians. Since then, they've sunsetted that program, so I get to say that I was one of 25 that got to do this.
Yeah.
Nobody else will ever be able to take that title from me. Um, yeah, and I
Great.
got to fly out to Google in Silicon Valley once, and they hosted us for about 2 to 3 days. So yeah, my experience has been really really cool. I got to be part of Google when it was really quite amazing. They don't really
Right.
have the same perks as they used to before, but I got to. It was like really when it was at its peak. That was when I got to start my career, so it was amazing.
Interesting. As we wrap up though, I'd like
Mhm.
you to give several tips, if you may, to those persons who may be watching slash listening to us and want wanted to get involved into some business. You know that the COVID had struck some persons out of employment, and they're
Mhm.
sitting there and would like to start something, but is afraid, not as risky as you and I may be, but they're afraid. Talk to them, pull them out of that seat.
I think it's more or less of focusing on what brings you passion. I think that's where businesses really actually strive or actually do really, really well is when somebody, the founder or the owner, or whatever you want to call us, are passionate about what we do. Um, I've gone through, I can't even imagine how many times I've failed in this business alone. And honestly, I feel like I'm still failing right now. But I wake up every single morning getting ready to do this because this is what I truly want to do with my life. I love this. Like PPC is literally everything that I know. It's something that I'm completely passionate about and something that makes me excited to wake up every single day. So I think that's really where a lot of people have to find their strength in all of it is finding something that they actually really quite enjoy and wanting to make that a full-time thing. So I know that it's scary. It definitely is. I mean, I've gone through it. I still go through it. It's not this moment of 5 years down the road, my business is still running and everything's going to be better. It's that unfortunately I can't corroborate that story. It kind of it has its peaks and it has its valleys. Every day is a new day. But the one thing that I um, love about it is that this is mine. This isn't somebody
Yeah,
else's.
yeah,
And a lot of people kind of sit there and look at me and they just go, "You keep on getting like I get." For the lack of a better term, and I'm not sure if I'm allowed to swear, but I'm going to really quickly. I get the shit kicked out of me almost every single day. And a lot of my friends are amazed by it. They're just like, you get up. Like, you get up every single time. You get beat up and you get up. And that's because I truly love what I do.
right.
So I think for anybody who's a little scared about actually going into self employment, I think it's more or less of just finding that thing that they truly love more than anything in the world and sharing that with the world versus looking for a business that's going to seemingly going to make them money. Because I don't think that ever really works out very well for people.
Yeah. Oh, great. Hey, Amit, nice to have you on Canute Exploration, your topic in a podcast. I am Dr. Canute White. Hey, keep in touch. Nice to have you. Thanks.
Definitely. It was great to be here.
Thank you. So that was Amit. She had talked about a number of things, and I'd want you to leave with three things. The passion that you need to have in starting a business. Risk. She talked about the risk that she takes, and that simply means that you have to also go into this thing with that risk mindset and ownership. She just alluded to that. At the end of it, it belongs to you, and it can grow, and you will be surprised to see how successful you become with that passion, risk, and that concept of ownership. Thanks for listening, Canute Exploration, your topic in a podcast. I am Dr. Canute White. See you and bye bye.